Hello and welcome from COP28. Today I'm joined by Vaishali Nigam Sinha, who is Chair Sustainability and co-founder of ReNew. Thank you so much for joining us today.
It's a pleasure.
Well, to begin with, I would love to sort of get your insight on how the situation is evolving with regard to renewable energy capacity in India. It's ramping up to become a hub of sustainable renewable energy. But what are the challenges? What are the main challenges to sort of ramping up further?
Sure. First of all, it's a pleasure to be here talking to you. Thank you for taking out the time. I think India's been a real role model when it comes to leadership and commitment and really walking the talk with respect to not only making announcements, but also making sure we implement and actually we exceed. So as we speak, our commitment was that we will be using, only 40% fossil fuel by 2022 or 2032, but we've met that goal in 2023 already. So, there's a lot being done. There are lots of policies, lots of enabling policies. I think events like the COP really help us a lot as private sector players, because I think it's charged the governments a lot more with respect to agility around policy. And when I say agility, I mean it's not only making policy frameworks to meet certain goals, but understanding that COVID happened and, the China plus one strategy had to evolve. So being agile about adjusting their policies as well. So it's a very sort of private sector minded approach, and that's fantastic. And I think that's what events like COP28, COP26 is when the private sector got involved. So it's been good. So in India, we've obviously, needless to say, 500 gigawatts, tripling renewables in the G20 declaration. So these have been all good announcements, and I think we've been on track to come up with very innovative programs like the Round the Clock, which is addressing the issue of intermittency and so on and so forth. So action on the ground has been timely and has been ambitious. And I think what that's done is it's given an opportunity for entrepreneurs like us to take action. It's given an opportunity to civil society organizations on the ground to work in partnerships, because a lot of the international organizations also want to come in and get things done. So in areas like skilling and capacity building, we are working on a lot of partnerships on the ground in states where renewables is ramping up. So all in all, if you see from the policy level to the private sector to on the ground engagement with the communities, it's been good. Now your second part of the question was, what are the problems and what are the issues? So when you look at the sector, I think we are doing a good job. There are certain issues, like if you look at our grid, you have the conventional sort of electricity going through it, but now you've got renewables, and I don't think we've upgraded the grid as much as we should, while the government is coming up with policies. But that's an area where we can ramp up the upgrade a lot more. Second area I feel is the DISCOM reform, the distribution company reform. I think that's an area which is going to also help a lot if we start it, but that's been a little bit of a slow starter. Actually, the third area, which I think we haven't seen enough of in India, is the action at the subnational level. So there's a huge amount of commitment on policy, enabling policies at the national level, but at the subnational level, it's been a little bit sporadic. So with more consistency there, and I guess a little bit more of global engagement, because if you look at the United States, it's the reverse there. You have subnational level, powerful engagement and leadership, but at the national level, it's on and off. So how can we work together and perhaps learn from each other a little bit, collaborate to do more together?
And I'd also like to talk to you about mobilising finance for the energy transition as well, and what needs to happen. I know you've mentioned some of the areas that still need work in order to facilitate more widespread adoption of renewable energy. But in terms of ramping up climate finance as well to fund the energy transition, where are we at in India on that?
No, so we just signed an MOU here with ADB, and there is, steps are being taken. There's a lot of interest from private sector, private finance, private capital to fund the sector, and so I think that's good. The part which we feel is not enough is where we see financial institutions not innovating enough to make sure that capital is available for this sector, which is the renewables space, at a concessional rate or at better rates than regular sort of debt funding which is coming to projects. And though we've done 8 green bonds, but if you ask us, what was the advantage from a cost perspective, there wasn't much. So perhaps financial institutions really need to step up their internal commitment committees to see how can they do better for this sector, rather than just sort of sort of building initiatives and getting the brand benefit of green finance. But they should really make sure that they act as enablers in countries like India in the renewable energy space, but most importantly in countries in Africa, because nature-based solution is it's a powerful sort of area which is coming up, and we need to make sure that we're not giving money, but we are acting using capital to empower countries and communities. And that only happens when capital becomes available, when stakeholders can do and create value. That's when they'll move ahead with pride in this sector. So concessional finance is important. We see a lot of announcements happening at the COP, but I think the pace of execution cannot be from one COP to the other, or a stock take in 8 years. That's too slow. We are already 1 degree too late as far as temperature targets are concerned. So we really need to, there is capital. When I speak to other CSOs and in financial institutions, they're saying that they have allocated capital and they really want to do more in the sector. And I'm like, please include us as your advisory council so we can tell you where is the innovation, where are the projects, and how can you ensure that you can get your approvals to invest, because it's a win-win for both. So we need to bridge that parallel path which is happening.
And just finally, I think at COP we are hearing about how all of these issues intersect, they're interconnected. And I was wondering if you could share some insight on how the situation is evolving with regard to ramping up renewable energy, land space, agriculture, and how those things connect, and also how we ensure that we ramp up renewable energy sustainably and sort of prioritize sustainable development in that capacity.
Sure. No, so we were one of the first movers. We're the first company to cross 1 gigawatt, 2 and then 5 gigawatt, and as they say, the rest is history, and we're currently generating, and if I include the pipeline, we're at about 14 gigawatts. So that means we've done a lot of work. I think what's also happened in parallel is there's a whole ESG movement which has also come up in a way which is quite positive. Of course, there's a debate on how positive is it and is it a cost or investment. I do believe it is powerful for helping corporates to do the right thing and asking us the right questions. And so therefore, it's important to, I think it's not a choice. You really have to ensure you care for the environment, biodiversity, the communities, etc. And there are regulations in place where you really cannot encroach on farmland. You cannot encroach in religious areas and so on and so forth, or heritage areas, sites and forests, etc. So I think so far we have been very mindful, and I have not seen that as a problem in India. India is a democracy where in the parliament you have lots of issues raised on so many things. But in the renewable energy space, the ramp up has been so fast and furious, but we've not had any issue really around, land acquisition is complex, more on the legal side. But as far as the communities are concerned, I think companies are operating with care. Of course, there are some issues here and there, but nothing which is so significant that it's going to impact the lives and livelihoods. And I think farmers are also, there is agriculture, but there's a huge opportunity for reskilling a large part of the population in the remotest parts of the countries, and to get them to become technicians and get involved in this whole transition, whether it is farmers, whether it is coal workers, whether it is salt pan workers, like we're working on a project called Project Surya, where we work with salt pan workers who are women who have a very tough life. And we are helping them to, they make about $250 a year, which is a very, it's not a large amount. But by becoming solar technicians, they're going to be able to save about the same amount every every month. So actually earn. So that's what they save, $250 a year, but now they'll be able to make that. So the math is like it's about 10 times benefit to their livelihoods. So we need to come up with more programs like this. We need to scale them up. We want to make sure that farmers get involved in some of the nature-based solution projects where there's shared value and afforestation and other programs which we require to be able to accelerate the whole decarbonization journey in India.
And just before you go, as we're at COP and considering the whole context of where the summit is taking place and the involvement of oil and gas, I'd like to get your thoughts on the role of oil and gas within the transition and having a seat at the table.
Sure. No, we have to. I mean, absolutely. It's that's a question everybody is looking to, I guess, not answer but observe that what's going to happen. I think it's great. I think you need the heart to obey, to be in the room, to have a productive discussion, to help them do what they need to do to decarbonize. And but we want to make sure that that step is taken in the right direction, and we're not circling around the same spot. So I am happy that they're in the room, but I'm going to be patient and see what's the outcome of it, what are the actions which are taken, and how do they feed into our journey of slowing the warming.
Fantastic. Thank you, Vaishali. We appreciate your time today.